sick in our community, mentally or physically or otherwise, that they may be restored to their full capabilities and continue contributing to our society. We are grateful for this opportunity to meet as a body and to support one another. And Heavenly Father, we say these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America,
to the republic
For which it stands,
under
one
God,
nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Seth and Lisa. Council, you have the agenda before us. I'd entertain a motion to adopt that agenda.
So moved.
A motion from Corinne. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I assume that to be unanimous. Cassie, would you record it as such? We're at a time for public comment. If there's anyone here in our Zoom meeting who would like to address the council at this time, we invite you to come forward if you state your place of residence and your full name, and we'll give you up to 3 minutes to address the council. So I now open it up for public comment. If there's anybody who would like to make public comment. Cassie, I don't see any. Do you?
I don't see any raised hands, no.
Okay, all right, I'll close public comment. There'll be an opportunity at the end to address the council again. Item number 3, council, we have the approval of the minutes of December 8th, 2020, a business meeting, and December 8th, 2020, our work session meeting. Any discussion on those items? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve them.
So moved.
I have a motion by Corinne. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Lisa. Any discussion, council?
No.
Hearing and seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, Cassie, let's record that as unanimous. For the benefit of those attending via Zoom, the council it's been over a month since we actually met in a business meeting, but we have been meeting. And there are some of these items that are on the consent agenda that we've discussed at length and have determined beforehand to place them on a consent agenda. Let me read through those. Number A is a proposed ordinance 2021-01, amending the Syracuse City General Plan map for property located at 4258 West and 1700 South, low density residential to commercial. Item B, proposed ordinance 2021-02, amending the Syracuse City zoning map from residential R1 to general commercial for property located at 4258 West, 1700 South. And C, the final plat approval for Stillwater Phase 9, located at approximately 2000 West and Parkview Drive. Council, is there any discussion on those items? Any that you'd like to pull from consent? Hearing and seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I propose that we approve all items on the consent agenda as you just listed.
All right, thank you, Jordan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Corinne. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Cassie, that is unanimous. Let's go now to our annual report from our Justice Court Judge. Paul, do you want to do an introduction here?
I don't know if the judge needs any introduction, but if so, this is Judge Hoskins. She's been with the city for, it's been 6 years or 7 years now.
Yeah, we're coming up on the 7th year.
Okay, so working on 7 years. Yeah, she's presided over our justice court. She also is a justice court judge for Clinton City. And those are both part-time, not assignments, but appointments. And she also practices, is it just family law or is it like general practice?
Say it's primarily family law.
Premier family law. Okay. But that's pretty much the introduction. So
Okay,
take it away,
thank
Judge.
you, Paul, and tell us what we need to know, Judge.
So I'm going to say something you're probably not expecting. This year has been fabulous. And let me tell you why. Because this access to justice and forcing us to use technology would not have happened any other way but for us having no choice. And in all of the meetings and trainings I go to, we've never once thought about a pandemic and what was happened. But I feel like the access to justice and people being able to come into the courts, we have so many people that can come in and do a 10-minute hearing or even a trial on a littler offense, and they don't have to miss work. They take 5 to 10 minutes versus the couple of hours that they were taking. Our calendar is moving so much faster. And I think and I don't even think this, I've talked to Mr. Robertson, to the other employees and public defenders. And once we are able to go back to in person, we're going to be keeping some virtual trials. It just works so much better for some of the public. And for some of the attorneys, they're now able to do a hearing in Clinton and in Syracuse and in Salt Lake County and Cache County, and they can get them all in. So I feel like getting people in timely, it happens so much quicker. And while it seems like this pandemic would have pushed things out, we're actually able to get them in faster. And so very few matters can we not get people in within a week or two of when they're scheduling. And I think part of that is just the quickness, and people aren't having to get babysitters or the daycare options and the health issues, and where it's been really beneficial. The other thing we're doing is that if there are needs that people need special arrangements, like we've had a couple of unusual interpreters, as I've said previously, we get a number of Chuukese people that speak, and it's a very difficult language to get an interpreter. We've had some deaf defendants that have come in, and so we've made exceptions and done appropriate social distancing. So I feel like on a whole, this has really furthered our courts, it's furthered our service, and we're taking lessons that are going to make us so much more into the future and offering it to people going forward. Just in regards to a couple of updates, the legislature changed it, and I'm now required to review I was always required to review everyone that's arrested, but we've changed the time frame. The goal that the courts administration has set is that anyone that's arrested, I try and review it within 4 hours. I'd say I'm much closer to 2 hours. And now, granted, if it's on a Christmas or a Sunday or at 2 a.m. in the morning, I'm not as good at the 2 hours, but if it's happening between like 7 a.m. to about 11 o'clock, people are getting seen really quickly. I do have a funny story. I reviewed someone, I believe it was for Clinton City, at like 11 o'clock, and then at 11:15 the jail called and said, "We've got a Syracuse, can you review them?" The reason this is funny is they wanted me to review them because they had the coronavirus. Well, their last name was Corona, and I thought, what are the chances to have the last name of Corona and to be getting Corona? That just sounds like that's a bad fate for them. So they were reviewed within 15 minutes of being arrested because the jail didn't want them in, and that was a service to the city. I've also submitted a plan for our reopening that's been approved by the state. So once we get to that, we've got the green light. So when Davis County goes to yellow and we can start doing it, the courts are on a different system than the governor's flags because the courts require people to come in. Since we've got a mandate and we can arrest people, our colors are different than what the governor's colors are because we take seriously the possibility of putting people into jail. As people may be aware, there's been an increase in domestic violence with what's been happening. I'm leading a statewide training for all the justice courts in February. We're trying to be mindful of domestic violence, of all the different sides of it and those outreaches. Now, I know that budget's a concern, and clearly I can't be arresting more people or doing more fines, but I would like you to tell what steps we've taken to be mindful. First of all, we've used all of our existing technology. With the exception of one minor expense, we got a speakerphone, which has been so worth it. It's made it the record. It was approximately $200. We haven't used any budgets. We've used all of our computers, and we've made it work. The other thing too is we've done all of my trainings. I'm required to have, I believe it's 25 hours of training. I've been able to do that all online. And in fact, I've done more training than normal this year because it's been so easy to do it online. So from a budget thing, we've actually cut back budgets that we have. The normal expenses that we've had, we've been able to cut those out entirely so that we can kind of make things go a little bit further. We've also taken the steps we need to try and do social distancing because we've got Mr. Roberts, we've got myself and the 2 clerks, which is part of the reason we bought the speakerphone so that we can be appropriately distanced. In regards to future plans, I think going forward, we're going to use some of what we've learned and that we will have a virtual hearing that's allowed. Because of how easy it is to log on, there's been times that Mr. Roberts or a defense counsel said, look, we don't have hearing till next Wednesday, it's a Thursday, can we jump on and do a quicker hearing? And so because of the access of this, we've been able to have hearings outside of our normal Wednesday mornings, which, I mean, we don't want to do that all the time, but there are exceptions, especially when there's domestic violence, that we want to have a hearing. So we've had a hearing on a Monday afternoon or a Friday at 4. And I think some of those things, as long as we can make it work with the different attorneys, there's no reason not to continue doing it. Are there any questions or concerns that I can address?
I have a quick question for you. I noticed, I read our manager's report that was just sent, and it was talking about the fees and fines. We've seen a huge decline in those numbers over the last few months. Do you see fewer cases, or what is your call on why you might be seeing fewer cases, and is there a specific area that is declining in perpetrators that you're seeing?
Well, I think it's more the arrests. I don't think the police officers are giving as many speeding tickets because there's just so many bigger things that are doing it. Paul would be able to talk more about the specific numbers, but it's just more a thing of who's arresting and what the types of crimes are. You know, prior to COVID, we went in a spurt where we had a lot of 18 to 24-year-olds that were getting charged with marijuana tickets and stuff. And now people just aren't out. And so I think there has been a decrease in crime because they can't get, you know what I mean? They're not out. The schools are quarantined. So I think that's part of it. And the police officers have got so much to do. And with the social distancing, they just don't have the ability to get out. And they're realizing, is it really worth a speeding ticket? Is it really worth an expired registration ticket? But I can tell you retail thefts are up. We're still getting a lot of those. I'm still doing a lot of trials. And so those cases are increasing.
Thank you. I did want to mention really quick, I really appreciate that you want to, in going forward, that you want to keep some of those digital and virtual things in place. A few years ago, I went with my son for a speeding ticket and we sat in court for 4 hours, and that meant time off for him. And I looked around at that court and I thought, this is a vicious cycle for these people. They get arrested, they have to come in, they miss work, then they lose their job, then you just could see the cycle. So I think we're going to see a huge increase in people able to take care of their problems without exacerbating them. So I hope you do go forward with more virtual meetings.
So I sit on a committee called the Self-Represented Committee, and it's got people from all over the states, and they talk about all different issues. They've been talking about a landlord-tenant, and I said this exact thing, and they asked me to submit a memorandum of things that I wanted to keep in place. And so I talked exactly about that. And I think my direct quote to them was, one of the things I have huge guilt about is making someone take off a half day or a full day of work just to continue the hearing. And the one thing, and this needs to be given out, kudos to Mr. Roberts, is that we are so much speedier than other people because Mr. Roberts will see people the same day. So many other courts make them take their plea and then come back. Whereas on most of those speeding tickets, Mr. Roberts handles them the same day. And so you're right, 3 hours is not what I like, but 3 hours is better than the 3 or the 4 hearings. I was talking to another person and their son got a ticket and they've just continued it. His hearing was in December, and this is his second hearing, and it's been now continued to March, and it's the same thing. And so I can't tell you how many people we call them or they log in and they say, just 1 minute, I need to walk outside of my work. They go handle our hearing. They're done in less than 10 minutes, which for some people, that's shorter than a smoke or a coffee break. And they're able to come back in and we're done. We've got it resolved. it's been wonderful.
That's
Why?
great.
Hence why I started off with, I think this year's been fabulous for that thing, because we never would have gone this direction but for being forced to do it. And really, for so many, and our high school students are a perfect example. They literally can take a break and we can do it on their lunch hour or whatever.
Yeah, I think anytime we can make the judicial system a little less punitive in many of these circumstances and get people on with their lives and out of the judicial system, I think we're doing a public service, because these people aren't terrible people, and we don't need to make their lives worse than they already are, having to recover from whatever it is they're doing. And so kudos to you. Do I call you Your Honor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Judge Hoskins?
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's the mindset of both Mr. Roberts and I is that let's get them in and out. And plus, if they're not working, then they can't pay their fines. Like, I mean, let's get them in and out. And Mr. Roberts and I agree 100%. We don't need to punish them twice. Like, they've done it, pay their debt, move on. And a lot of these things are crimes of poverty. Like a no insurance is because they don't have money. If I then take it away, they're having to work more, then it's that cycle. And so pay their debt to society, move on, and make sure you have insurance. Let's make it so that they can get out. And you're right, it's a black hole for many of them.
Judge,
I love it.
I wanted to mention that Paul had told us how you've been able to refer a lot of clients who need additional help, especially with mental health services. So I appreciate you being caring enough to notice that and identify it, and also help them stop the recidivism so that they get the actual help they need rather than just showing up again the next time. Thank you.
Well, and Paul and I've actually been talking about trying to do some more mental health, things specifically with our court, and hopefully that's something we can get accomplished this year. But mental health is another huge thing, and that's part of it with a lot of the marijuana, for instance, is people are self-medicating. And even with the domestic violence, alcohol is a culprit. And so it's not necessarily bad. And I agree with what Mr. Savage said, that Syracuse is a great place to live. Like 99% of our population and the people, it's a 16-year-old driving too fast. It's, a 50-year-old woman that actually accidentally took an Ambien and she got a DUI, not because she was doing something, but she had a medication. These aren't malicious offenses. There's stuff that we need to do. And mental health is just, I wish we had more tools, but we're really lucky to have Davis Behavioral. They come in and help us, and they do assessments, and we really try to figure out, is there a route? A speeding ticket with a 16-year-old, there's no route. That is the route. But, it's really sad. I remember one of my first cases in Syracuse, it was a retail theft, and they had stolen beef jerky sticks and a Lunchable. And then he told me he couldn't read. And so I was like, someone cannot read in Syracuse? And it was a little bit that, okay, the much bigger goal is he's got to get his reading up to speed.
Right.
So I'd like to ask about one thing you started with, and that was that you were hoping a lot of these things would continue. So from a perspective of when I first started on the council, I had just worked with the state of Utah on video conferencing for the Salt Lake City courts, which were state of Utah courts. The concept that we went in with was that there was less risk to transport criminals, and this is obviously not our court, but there was less risk to transport criminals, and it was quicker to get people in and out. So since they adopted that several years ago, why do you think they were slow to allow it here? And the reason I ask is, are there any obstacles we have to help you overcome so that you can keep this? Because clearly it sounds like it's working.
Well, so as I said, I'm coming up on my 7th year, and I've actually maybe only had someone in jail transported like once. So we've been doing all of the jail stuff because it saves the police officers money,
Right.
The transports. And so I don't know that, with the exception of a trial, that I've ever had them transport anyone. So we have been doing that access. My only concern, and it's kind of talking about this cell, is that because of this Zoom, I can't have the public, it's harder for the public defenders to get in and talk to them COVID ways because they can't do it. And so my concern is an access to justice for those defendants is how do they get private time to talk to their attorney? And so what we've been doing is I'll like leave the room and then the public defender can kind of talk to them. But I think at this point, there's nothing really that I need the city to do because we're going to keep doing it. Like there's no reason to, but back to your question, why did it take so long? Because I think people like to be able to see someone in person. We're talking about their constitutional rights and I have the ability to send someone to jail. I think people had a little bit of a gut reaction that they would only be seeing me on a video. And so because I had such ability to impair their constitutional rights, we didn't want to take those away willy-nilly. And so because people wanted to be able to come in and they wanted to be able to explain their case. All of the statistics say that if people feel like they've gotten their day in court, they can explain it. They're much better to deal with the ruling, even if it's against them. And so people feel like in person, they're telling their story better. So it was more a psychological barrier that we've had to overcome. And now that we've overcome it, I think the majority of attorneys and stuff are going to say do it. And it's going to be more the exception that wants to come into court. Or if we have a big trial, if we're doing a retail theft trial, if we're doing a domestic violence trial, I think those things will still be in person.
So you just mentioned that the attorneys would have to agree to this to continue. Are you saying that attorneys could object to us continuing to use this? Yeah,
what the current pandemic order says is that the attorneys need to agree to it. If I find that there's been like an unreasonable thing, then I can do it. But we have the confrontation clause in the Constitution. And so what the general thing has been is that if you have a Class B misdemeanor, something where I can do, 90, 120 days of jail, they should be able to have the right to do it. We haven't even started jury trials back on any level statewide. Like I think there's been 2 across the state. And people have concerns that looking at a witness, the jury can't get as good of a feel for it. Now, we at Syracuse have had like 2 jury trials in my 7 years, but yeah, the attorneys can object. And if I was a defense attorney and I had a big thing, I don't know that I would want my client to be just appearing. I would want them to be able to go eyeball to eyeball them on a jury trial. But the majority of attorneys, this is so much easier for them that they can appear remotely.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Judge, thank you very much. We sure appreciate you and appreciate the caliber of the court that you run.
And thank you. It's such an honor and a privilege. And thank you so much for giving me such great staff. Like, Mr. Roberts goes out of his way. Cassie goes out of her way. Anytime I've had problems, you and Brody have done it. I've had the same clerks and it's a honor to work for Syracuse City. And I tell everyone that. So thank you so much. And one more thing, and I said this last year, but you guys have the only female justice court north of Salt Lake. And so Syracuse City took a risk and they put the only female one. And I think that's something to applaud that, we've got some diversity here and that you guys took a risk on me, and thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
According to Cassie, we're about ready to rename manhole covers too.
We're glad to have you, Judge.
Thank you.
Thank you
for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, let's move to item number 6, authorized administration to award contract for 1200 South Waterline project. Robert, do you want to lead us into this one?
Yes, there I am, man. Absolutely. So we bid out this 1200 South project. We got, I think there's 25 plan holders and 9 bidders. So we had a really good round of bidders. The low bid is Leon Paulson, and they came in at a really good price. So the scope of the project is connecting culinary and secondary water mains from where Criddle is in 1200 South over to Bridgeway Island, making connection there, and then through Bridgeway Island we'll have connection over to 4500 West. So it's really just making this short little simple connection. The reason for the timing is West Point City has a developer ready to develop the north half of 1200 South because that is in their city. The city boundary runs right down the middle of 1200 South, just north of Bridgeway Island. But we want to get our water line connections in before they decide to pave with that new development. So that's the purpose for the timing. So this project will not finish out the south half of the asphalt road. We'll have to come back and bid that out separately. So this is just water lines connections.
Corinne, do you want to lead us here?
Well, I'm very impressed by the bids, and Beck apparently thinks they're the bee's knees. So we're appreciative of Leon Paulson for sure, and grateful that they fit the bill, and they have a good reputation as well. So thank you, Robert.
You bet.
Council, anyone else?
Well, I was noticing that we were able to save about $100,000 from what we had set aside for that. So is that correct? About 97,000 is what I saw?
It's awesome.
Yes, that is correct. Part of that was the low bid. The other part was our city engineer had a brilliant idea to scope the project a little different after it bid out. Originally, it was not after it bid out, after we had the budget put together. Originally, we were planning on running both culinary and secondary down 1200 South all the way to 4500 West. Purpose for that is to create redundancy in our system. So if there's a water leak and we have to shut off people, there's still feed from other parts of the distribution network. Our city engineer realized that we have that redundancy through Bridgeway Island. And if we just hook onto a stub in the dead end road that stubs north to 1200, we'll accomplish the exact same thing. And then we can abandon a section of main in 4500 West, which is UDOT's road, north of where Bridgeway Island connects to 4500. So it's less maintenance, it's less costs now and for long term. So it's a really good idea.
And you can do it without tearing up concrete.
Yes, that's right.
When we go back for the asphalt, you said we have to bid on that $300,000 included, assuming asphalt would be done, or is that a completely separate project?
Yeah, that was separate. We were hoping that we could get the asphalt done by the contractor who's doing the development for West Point, but there's too many challenges with that. One is that it's a different city, and two is we do need to follow our purchase policy, which this is part of our purchase policy is presenting this to you, anything over the bid limit. So long story short, we're going to separate it out just so we stay in check with our purchase policy.
We're going to have two different pours, one from West Point, one from Syracuse, and we'll just try to make a mesh.
Yeah. Yep.
Please tell Brian thank you for us.
Yes.
Any other discussion, council? I'd entertain a motion.
Mayor, I make the motion that we award the contract for the 1200 South water line project to Leon Paulson Construction. Will that do?
Yes.
Okay.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Jordan. Any further discussion, council? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Cassie, would you record that as unanimous? Noah, are you there? Let's do a continued discussion and or action regarding potential partnership with the private property owner regarding Boyson Village project concept at approximately 4000 West and Antelope Drive. Can you lead us into this? Mm-hmm.
So this probably doesn't require much of an introduction. We've been talking about this for a little while. Last time we left off with I guess a subcommittee, Dave and Lisa, that were going to look into this, and they wanted to talk with the Boysons and the Thackers, who are the landowners where we would place those homes. I've been in contact with Randy Jeffries with UDOT and let him know, that we're still trying to understand. And he said it's okay. We have until springtime. After that, it's going to be too late. I've brought up here on the screen Jen Thacker. She's been still toying around with how the property could lay out with or without the homes. You know, they could utilize the surrounding property with the sewer district to create a little bit of a shopping area, maybe even a park. But these are all, you know, these are all conceptual ideas. They're of course willing to accept the homes and ownership of them. We've talked about there's a certain amount of risk that comes with this. This would essentially be the city footing the bill for the relocation of some of these homes, with the hope that this would spur this sort of economic development village that could attract people, maybe generate a little bit of sales tax. But more than anything, kind of set ourselves apart as the brand that we're trying to create as a city to have this kind of use out here. So I don't know if Dave or Lisa wants to chime in. I think I saw.
It was me who was in the.
Oh, sorry,
okay.
Corinne. My memory is failing me.
I was gonna say, I don't remember doing any of this, so okay.
It's all good.
But yeah, Brett and Jen, I think I saw them. Oh, they're there.
Yeah, they're here.
So feel free to ask any of us questions. And really, we just, you know, before I don't know how much use it would be for me to get any more detailed estimates and cost estimates. We know we're about $100,000 a structure, but really the city needs to decide if we're gonna pay for this, how we're gonna pay for this, that sort of thing.
I was just going to say that we did garner some really valuable information in talking with the Boysons and saying that we kind of narrowed it down to 2 homes maximum, and the cost of some of the homes would be almost prohibitive, like on the brick home that's in the packet. It pretty much is not going to happen with the underpinning and everything that needs to happen on there. But possibly talking with UDOT about preserving those windows and adding them in as a feature in a future home or a remodel of one of these smaller homes even. But then there was also one of the homes that had asbestos shingles, so that eliminated that one off the bat. So I believe it was it this one? Or was it the little one? Oh, it was that one. So it pretty much laid it down to 2, and let's let the council know which 2 of those are right off so that we can get down to more pinpoint.
Yeah, so it'd be this yellow one and this one.
And then also there was talk about salvaging the porch, stoop, and awnings off of the home next to the Canos. We may not have it in this packet, but just as well to kind of preserve some of those features that we've seen for years and some of us for a lifetime, right? And preserve those, like there we are on the screen. So that front porch is very cute, and that she loves the awnings, and I think it'd be great if we could preserve those and reuse them. It's much better than it going to a landfill any day. So just want to make sure that the council knew about those things from our discussion with the Boysons. Did I get all that right, Boysons?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Anyway, and I guess Dave was supposed to lead out on this. My apologies, Dave.
So we did talk a lot about salvage. And now where are we with that? Because my understanding is that UDOT has now come back and said that they don't have any money to go towards salvage. Is that correct?
The UDOT money was more about the grant, like the additional monies for historical preservation, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they couldn't help us to salvage some of these items. That's what that conversation with Brody and those guys is about.
So I had an email interchange with Randy Jeffries, and he said if we want to salvage any of the items, they just want to know beforehand, and he thinks that would be fine. And as far as UDOT pitching in the cost for relocation, you know, they've already budgeted some money for demolition of these homes. So they could, any savings that relocating the home would have in the demolition costs, they're still willing to contribute that. We just don't know the exact dollar amount. Even if we relocate a home, the foundation, and there'll be other things that they still need to clean up on the property to get it ready for the road. But my guess is that might be anywhere between $5,000 to $10,000 that UDOT would be kicking in for those two homes.
So
Both-
where we are right now, Mr. Boyson had expressed to us some confidence that he could do some of the salvage work himself. And I don't think there's really any risk there, because if anything were to go wrong, the house is going to be demolished anyway. So I think that we definitely would want to support that. I have been wrestling with the concept of how do we treat this project equally with anyone else that would ask for something of this nature or similar. And to that end, what I expressed in the last council meeting was I wanted to reach out and speak to the Boysons directly and find out if we felt like by moving a house or two, that would speed up this whole project. One of the things that came out of our meeting was they very clearly let us know that they have money to work on their current project. But if we move this house, I'm not sure that there's really funds to do that now. Would it help down the road? Absolutely. So the question is, how far down the road is that? And is this really something that we want to do as a long-term project? Noah had brought up the fact that Gardner Village, which is a similar idea to this concept, has stopped moving homes and is now just building similar style homes because it's actually cheaper to build a new home than it is to try and move the old one. So I have mixed feelings about this. I want to help this project, but I want to do what helps it the most. And I'm not sure that moving a house is going to get us that much further down the road. It's certainly a challenge for the city. After we just went through our budget retreat, this would have to come out of general fund money. We don't have a TIF in place. I wish we did. But that does mean that we have to consider that this is general fund money. And I think that has to be taken into consideration.
That's a point I wanted to talk about specifically is, and I don't understand the legalities involved in this, is what are the options of taking a loan from an existing TIF and doing a payback from a future TIF?
Yeah,
Noah's
my
shaking his
understanding
head,
was-
so that doesn't sound good.
Yeah, my understanding was if
existing-
there isn't a TIF, we can't do that. That
You can loan between TIFs. You know, the city
But where
has
there isn't
an
one.
overarching RDA board, but yeah,
Yeah,
this
but
isn't part of a TIF. It's not in
isn't
an
one.
existing TIF area. I think it'd be pretty tough to justify that.
Having said that, you could, while this particular action with because of the timing couldn't happen, if we do establish a CRA or TIF and include the Boyson property in it in the future, that timing might actually line up with when it comes time for them, if they want to build shops, that there can be a participation with the tax increment financing.
You'd have an established baseline, and then any increase in that would start generating some money.
And
The
to
other thing
that,
to consider is the fact that our sales tax has been up since last year.
if I may, let me chime in here and say that one of the things that came out of our meeting, which I thought was very key to this whole thing, is that Jen had said that one of the most key elements to her to making this work was going to be an events barn. And that way they could generate festivals, they could generate big events that would probably drive a lot more, including making this really work. If that's more important, I kind of over the time decided that, I would rather put this in a TIF and lend money for an events thing, because I can justify that that's bringing people into the city. That's doing more for more businesses than just this one. Whereas if we moved a building that has to be repaired before it can be used, that's a lot of money on something that isn't a finished deal. So I when I heard that, I kind of, went back, wrestled with it, and thought maybe that's a better use of our funds in the future, because if we were to quickly establish a TIF, we could borrow from one of the RDAs or something, because now we have that in place.
Well, as I was reading through their proposal, they talked about doing a percentage of things giving back to the community. Maybe we can do some sort of an agreement, because it is a gathering place. There are lots of opportunities for them to do something that are community minded and centered. Maybe as part of this structure of our help involved in building this and creating this, we can do something in terms of an agreement for future events to be held there.
I also like the historical aspect. I think that adds an additional draw to the location, to know that there are some historical buildings in there. One of my biggest regrets, I wasn't on the council at the time, but when we lost I forgot what the name of the building is, the old brick building that used to sit.
The old grocery store.
Yeah,
Mia.
I mean, that was a tragic loss when that was just destroyed. And even though the city overwhelmingly said they wanted to keep it, but it just wasn't feasible. And I think we're in a situation where I think I don't think we would want to do more than two, obviously. But I think there is some benefit to preserving history, and it adds an additional appeal to the location to have that historical aspect. So I actually, normally I don't like spending money on these types of things, but I think there is some necessity to preserve history.
Well, let's be fair here in that the most appealing historic buildings, the ones that really have a style and character of history, are the ones we can't take.
Yeah, if we could get the brick one, I would take the brick one over all of these if we could just
I
get the
agree,
brick one
but we
down
can't
there.
take the brick one because they would have to take all the bricks off to move it.
I have to say that the little farmhouse one with the porch along the whole front,
That's a great one.
it is a great one. And that really says Syracuse to me.
It does. And that's the
Okay.
farm style too.
Except for we have to keep in mind that part of the discussion was we may lose that front porch because it won't be able to be moved because it's in an addition to the front part of the house. And you may lose a part of the back house in that move. So we're not really getting the character elements.
The addition on the back obviously is probably not going to come with, and
Right.
that's pretty standard for moving to take off porches and then have them reapplied in some way, whether it's new construction or otherwise. But I think that that's just a really great example, and probably would, at least in looking at the foundations of these and the size, that one's probably going to be easier than the other yellow one.
And
I agree.
So I admit, I don't love the yellow one.
I
Yeah,
don't either.
If I had to pick two, I would take the brick one, which doesn't sound like that's an option, even though
Not
that
an
one has,
option.
that's the one thing we're trying to salvage everything from.
yes, take the windows, take everything, the door, whatever
Yeah.
we can from it.
But see, I would rather give money to somebody building something using all those historic elements than try to salvage a building that has no elements, that's got character.
Yeah, that's a
but
good
that's
point.
not
Like,
how
what would
does.
it cost to take that out and just build the building with those things in it?
Would
We
cost
think it's actually
a lot
cheaper.
more than-
What-
No,
Oh, no,
with Corinne with collaborating with the museum. So I'm sure that they have a bunch of historic photos with houses that have been torn down previously.
Yes.
You could come up with some type of replica, but then the nice thing about it is that you can make it to size that fits the area versus trying to fit a house in an area.
And on top of that, the cost, based on what we're looking and some like just on this place that we're redoing now to get it up to code for commercial is costing quite a bit. So to take these houses, move them, get an architect and an engineer to make sure that they can be up to, commercial is probably going to be more expensive than building a new house.
So are you thinking yourselves to start from scratch then and have us assist you that way? Or, okay, I see your wife shaking her head.
So we love the village theme. We think it's going to work. And so we're excited to take any help we can get. But I think building new places and using a lot of the existing elements would probably be cheaper, and then also would be able to build them to the size of the area we're trying to fit them in.
And you'd be able to get more, I think, for your money doing it that way, because there's so many hidden costs in trying to move an old building.
So you're saying, Boyson, I just want to be clear, you're saying you want to salvage any quaint things that we can out of them and to use in future builds rather than moving homes. Is this correct?
Yes, we think it will get more bang for the buck that way.
I agree. Love that.
Yeah, I would prefer that.
And I'd be happy to put some money to help you to do that. I mean, golly, the cost savings alone, and then in the future, we can definitely help you with
well, now keep in mind what I proposed earlier, which was not my proposal, but actually Jen's, was, that events barn may be the most critical element to making this a destination place. I would rather be consider at a future time when they're ready to do that, putting money towards that than maybe putting money towards something else, because if that's the critical piece that makes this work, and we can talk about that later. I think the real issue is today, we're better off salvaging than we are moving. And we're better off giving to something else in the future that will progress faster than trying to bring one of these old ones up to code. So
can we deal with UDOT at this point to go through all the homes we really liked and take any of those things? Or because I know that UDOT kind of basically says we buy these homes and we get to do what we want with them. Is there any kind of deal we can make that we can say, can we get these doors and these windows? And
we did ask about that.
Yeah, some like email documents.
Brody, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna one more idea, and I just thought of it, so I haven't ran it by the boys since, haven't talked to Cresta, haven't talked to Noah. But if the council were going to entertain spending general fund dollars, let's say you're going to move the houses, which kind of sounds like you won't, but we just came out of a retreat where the council discussed possibly using some of the park money to buy land or build parks. If you're going to use general fund money instead of RDA money, and the Boysons were open to it, maybe you could do a trade where the city contributes some kind of money towards something, and the Boysons give the city, if there's any kind of park incorporation into the development where it could be actually city-owned property, but it functions like a park, but it also functions within their development, so that there's some sort of equity for the money that the city spends in return.
We did actually talk a little bit about this in our meeting, where we brought up the fact that they want a playground that would be behind this, so that people come, maybe they're leaving the island, buy the ice cream, maybe some flowers, kids can play on the playground, whatever. All of that is a realistic possibility, but I love the idea that there's a possibility that we could have some kind of partnership where this could count towards parkland, but they could run it as the professional partner of some kind of P3. And that would be exclusive to them, and they would have all those rights, but it would just help us accomplish the park needs of the city. But I don't know what you do. Well, the one thing that we mentioned when we brought that up is I don't know what you do when there's closing times, because public spaces don't necessarily close. I mean, they do close, but
Parks close.
they
But you're not-
close, but they're not really closed.
Sure.
Well, that would definitely be something that you negotiate, because we're helping them maybe buy the equipment, but then access would be restricted for certain hours. I mean,
I think
that's
it,
what quasi-public partnership is.
Yeah, if we
Yeah.
call this a park, it just opens up all kinds of new funding
Right.
Mm.
opportunities.
And we can also get grants at that time to help them develop this, because there is a city part of the partnership. We've looked at that before. And I mean, maybe this is more discussion that we have to have, but I think for today, where I kind of want to bring it back around is, I'm not sure it's worth it to try and move the actual building. I'm absolutely certain it's worth it to work on salvage, and UDOT appears to be open to that. So I think we just need to identify the pieces and make sure that we get that stamped approval, and then we can just do that, because didn't they say they were okay with that for historical preservation? They just weren't going to pay for it.
I have a Sawzall.
I do too.
I have a crowbar.
We have all the tools necessary, and we have a trailer, so we would be able to accomplish salvaging the material.
Excellent.
Yep.
So we
Council-
need to finalize permissions to the properties and when we can do that, right?
I think the proposal tonight is that we do all that we can to help them salvage, but that we probably don't move a building.
That's the main decision for tonight. Are we
And I think
working out
that's the-
money to move
I think
buildings?
both sides would
That's
be-
what I would like to do as a motion, is just to say we're not going to move a building, but we will do all that we can to help them salvage.
Before you making that as a motion, Dave,
Yeah,
before I accept that as a motion, can I just weigh in as an old timer?
yes.
The only building along there that most of us who've been here all our lives would consider to be of historic value is the brick one. That's the old Rampton home. And that's the only one you can't move.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
you can with enough money, you can do anything.
yeah, I know. And
It'd be better to re-brick it based on the model.
you want to save the trees around it too, Noah.
That's right.
Yeah. So I think you've made the right choice. I think if we take elements from them, salvage those, and build new, we're probably smarter in the long run. So I want you to know I support your motion, Dave. Do I have a second?
Second.
The second by Jordan. Any further discussion, council?
I was just gonna say that in Randy's email, he just said he wants to know exactly what we're taking and making sure that we're not leaving like an unsafe situation, and so
Like
that
some-
UDOT is aware of what we're salvaging and why we're salvaging it for. I'm sure there's
Okay,
some
so
more
we're in the middle of
formalities
a motion,
we
but
need to
that
do.
motion was included that we would do that with, that
Yeah.
we would do that with Randy.
Perfect.
All right. Seeing no more discussion, I'd call the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, looks like we have our direction.
And if we could, I agree, if we could have got that brick home, but it's just too much money to move that one.
Well, I would suggest that the committee that's been meeting on this, meet with the Boysons, and you go up and survey what you want to say, salvage, and then maybe even, bring Randy or his designate in to that meeting and make that decision, make it clear.
And maybe as part of your salvage, take a lot of that brick.
Yeah, I think we can take the brick if we want, but
Brick is a little tough because you have to chisel off all the old mortar to relay it. I've done this before, but it's very salvageable.
And valuable too. People will pay prime dollar for
Well, and
salvage.
if we're gonna shrink the footprint of these homes and make them a more doable, a smaller version, we might be able to actually brick one of these duplicate homes.
Yeah.
Whatever the Boysons want, we'll help them with.
We'll do
Yeah,
a
it
dog.
definitely sounds more realistic of building half of the size and salvaging the material, because we can use that brick. We could build,
Yeah.
accent wall and possibly even brick a whole building, a smaller building.
That'd be a
And we
great
talked about maybe doing something else with the brick, you know?
Brody and Noah, it looks like we have our direction, so let's move forward from that. Let's go on, council. Let's come down to item number 8. Proposed ordinance 2020-32. Amending, should that be changed? 2020 to 2021?
No, because it was considered initially in 2020 is when it started.
So that's when we considered it? Okay.
Yeah.
Proposed ordinance 2020-32, amending section 1040.030 of the Syracuse City Municipal Zoning Code pertaining to tandem parking. Noah, do you want to lead us in this?
Yes, sir. We left off last time with a good conversation, debate about what happens if somebody parks outside of the assigned spot and they lock somebody in their garage. And so the solution that we found was to add this sentence. In multifamily housing projects, signage identifying assigned parking shall be installed prior to occupancy. So now all of those stalls should be identified, and hopefully that remedies the concern.
Okay, so the other thing that we talked about, and this is where I think I want to go back to, is the ability for us to just put something in the language that applies to this particular development and not do something that's a permanent change to the code, because it seems to apply and fit this situation, but we can think of a lot of situations it wouldn't fit. So
Right.
I want to go back to the idea that maybe the better way to handle this is to put something in the development agreement that allows this and as an exception, and not make a permanent change to the code. That would be where I that's, I went back and read some of this, and I think that's where I would prefer to go.
Where are situations where you think it wouldn't apply?
Well, I think certainly in a smaller development where the space is not as limited for parking, it wouldn't be preferable. Let's say that it's a couple of fourplexes. I wouldn't want somebody to take and say, well, I'm going to do tandem parking when I could just as easy do something else because it's allowable. Or I wouldn't want to see a situation where somebody used tandem parking so that they could eliminate front yards, because we've had that talk before about, wanting a minimum lot width. And so again, that's where I'm concerned, is that we start losing other architectural standards that we have enjoyed. Whereas in this particular case, because of the way that the land lays out and because of some of the other things they're willing to give us as a part of the overall development, in order for them to get the parking in, tandem really is a necessary thing.
I would like to ask Paul if that's a realistic thing, because I know that sometimes we can get ourselves into trouble by, legislating for just one specific plot. If Mr. Roberts could chime in on that, that would help.
Sure. So yeah, it's permissible. We believe, the court hasn't directly addressed it, but they suggested that it is, but you would need to go through essentially the land use process for that exception to the rule. There was a case where a council tried to kind of bypass the whole hearing process, and they got in trouble for that. But the decision suggested that they can legislate a land use thing for that one project if they want to, but they have to go through a public hearing process for it. So if you were to do it in this case, rather than a text amendment, you'd have to go back for the specific project and go through the public hearing process to address this one issue.
Okay, so that kind of lays that out. If we want to go that route, then it has to go through public hearing. So a different way than this, for sure.
And I'm okay with that, because I think that we've enjoyed the benefits of not allowing tandem parking for a lot of projects. It's just set us in the right direction. So I would prefer to make this one exception. That's the direction I'd like to go.
What about in the other multifamily projects though, that a similar situation could exist?
Well, we do have part of our ordinance that says that they don't all have to be double wide garages. They could be a single car garage. And so in that case, you're pretty much already having tandem parking if one parks outside and one's inside. So I'm kind of wondering what's the difference.
Well, again, you know, if we were to just take it project by project, at least until we see a need to make it as a regular part of our city, let's say another one comes forward, we would address it just like we've addressed this one. We would decide whether it fits and why it fits. And if it does, we can go forward. But I think that there are a lot of situations that it doesn't fit. And I think more than that it does. So for that reason, I stick by, I'd prefer to make it a part of the development agreement by using the process of a hearing than making it an overall change. Otherwise, we're going to see it in places we don't want it.
Can you make tandem parking, this is probably the wrong terminology, but a major conditional use or something like that, that it
has to be approved?
It has to go through a formal approval process as part of the project. I guess we're kind of doing that anyway.
That's kind of what is being proposed. I mean, I'm not necessarily for that, but.
So tell me what the reasons why we're allowing it in this. Is it because we have the building that's commercial that gives us plenty of extra parking? Is it because of the layout? I mean, what would make this more approvable in this condition and not in someone else's?
That's my question. What are the other places that are not acceptable, Dave?
Well, so here's the reason why it's acceptable here.
Okay.
Because we're getting the other things like a business building that gives us extra parking. The one thing that it doesn't allow is parking near enough to the development, because in all of our large developments, we require that there be extra parking within a certain amount of distance. Because of the extra things like the gym and the extra stuff, the amenities that are all in the L-shaped building, it doesn't leave us enough room to get it close enough to meet that part of the ordinance. But we certainly like that part of the ordinance in pretty much every RPC and every other multifamily type or style area that we've gone with, is that we want people to have parking near enough. In this case, it doesn't give it the distance. So I would suggest that it's a unique situation that we're getting extra amenities and extra benefits to the city by allowing this. I would say
could we possibly say in areas where we have a new proposal that if there's significant amenities and not enough parking close enough, that they could apply for tandem parking or whatever? I mean,
I'm
considered for tandem parking.
Maybe I can give a few examples and
okay, that would help. Thank you.
I feel like maybe we're getting a little confused about when this is applied.
Yes.
The only time we want to make this an option is when there's a garage and a driveway right in front of that garage. So like, we never want to do tandem parking in a commercial area. And it specifically says that that's still not allowed even after this amendment. So commercial areas, tandem parking is not allowed. Right now, the only time tandem parking is available is in single family and 2-family dwellings. And so townhomes in some of those cases are being considered, 2-family dwellings, or sometimes they're considered to be single family dwellings if they're owner occupied. So is what we're really, if you remember back to Jerry Preston's project, he has tuck under garages and he has the parking in front of those garages. And we've already approved his development agreement saying that the tandem parking is only, acknowledge. Remember, Paul counseled us about the dangers of getting around our ordinance with development agreement. It's always better to have it clearly laid out in our ordinance. So really what we're worried about is having a garage that's assigned to a specific unit,
Right.
and then a stall in front of that garage,
Right.
and then somebody else parking in front of that stall and blocking it. So I think that's the only, in single family and multifamily is the only places that we anticipated this being implemented. But the biggest concern was, oh, well, what about people that might accidentally park in front of a assigned garage and then block them in? So that's what that's saying. So right now it says tandem parking. This chapter prohibits tandem parking except for single family and two family dwellings. So we see this all over the city already, and it's allowed. But this amendment would change it. So it says this chapter prohibits tandem parking except for residential units of the same household and in front of the unit's enclosed garage. So for example, in the Jerry Preston where they have the assigned garage, the only people that can park tandem is for the same household. So that's their assigned guest parking. Nobody else can park there besides that household, and their spot can only be in front of their unit's enclosed garage.
Right.
And then it just further clarifies that in multifamily housing projects, because in every single home, you're not going to want to have to put a sign saying that it's, reserved in front of your 2-car garage. But it says in multifamily housing projects, signage identifying assigned parking shall be installed prior to occupancy. So that would just basically say like guest parking for unit 201.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty narrow allowance. Everywhere else, it's still prohibited. So we're just saying in these scope, we're allowing this to come in. But if you guys wanted to change it to a conditional use, that's fine. But I think it's already really narrow right here. The only place you can use it is in that case where you have that guest parking that's going to be in front of a garage.
So Noah, if we see another application that comes forward with a proposed tandem parking situation and we don't feel that it's parked adequately and we have some concerns around the distribution and such, does this being in code prohibit our ability to kind of negotiate a more favorable outcome?
Absolutely not. Yeah. I mean, right now we're looking at a very specific thing, but if you read through the entire parking ordinance, there's all kinds of stuff talking about
that's
how it should be situated and the distances, and there's lots of other rules. Right now it's just very focused in tandem parking only, but yeah, we still have lots of other control to regulate parking.
So I guess that's my point, is where I would probably lean towards preferring it here in code. And I thought that's kind of about as close as we got last time we had this discussion. Was the hanging point was that we wanted signage to kind of put the icing on the cake and say, okay, we're comfortable with it. And so I guess I'm still in support of this language suggestion for the codified version.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm good with it. I like it. They do it all the time in lots of areas. So.
As long as our control are still in place to be able to ensure preferable parking situations, I'm fully supportive.
And thank you for that description that this is a very narrow definition. That really helps. So that because I kept thinking, where are all these tandem things happening? So thank you.
It's very rare.
And but we're also saying it has to be rare because it has to be in front of a garage. That helps a ton. Thank you, Noah.
Okay, so it sounds like we have majority that's in favor of letting it go this way, which is fine. But I just want to be very clear of my explanation of where I stand on this, so that I am in favor of it in this situation. I am worried that if I agree to codify this, which means I'll probably vote no, but I'm worried that if I codify this, what we'll get is applications for these stacked sliver of a multi-family or attached homes, which are just these narrow little wedges because they're getting all of their parking in just the width of one car. And that's where I'm concerned. I'm concerned that we're going to get applications for these 2- and 3-story, one owner slivers that I don't think are really good design.
Well, remember, this is only in the mixed use zone right now. This is not in any, it's not in the RPC, it's not in the PRD, it's not in any of the R zones.
And
This is a mixed use zone only, which I don't see many more of in our community.
and mixed use also is form-based. So if we don't like it,
We said it was form-based, but we've put so much code around it that it's,
Yeah, I don't know that
it's
really is.
loosely form-based.
well, that's what I'm saying. That overall, though, if you don't like it, you have any reason to go, I don't like it. You don't have to have a specific reason.
Then we feel then we get guilted into doing for
Yeah.
doing that though.
That's not our problem.
Lisa, would you like to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I agree with keeping it in this code form right here. I think that it's pretty restrictive the way it's written. It narrows it way down. And I would rather do this than have it open up to be specific to this development rather than applying to all. And I'd say keep it in there and
Right.
keep it in code.
Can you tell me, I want to just delve into this specific project just momentarily. What is the parking per house in this? I don't recall. Housing, the parking per
Units per, or stalls per unit.
Yes.
2.5.
1.5. It's
In
right
the
there.
Preston.
Yes.
So if you go to the mixed use zone, it says one stall for residential, each unit, and one stall for guests, so 2 per unit.
All right, I understand that. What is Preston's?
Their number.
How many do they have?
Yep.
Enough. They had
But they have enough counting the parking lot that's adjacent to the professional building.
Yeah.
It's not enough based on
Not on their
just
own.
what's in front of the apartments.
Yeah, there's like walking distance within 350 feet or something like that.
Yeah, remember we changed that. to-
Right, which I understand and I'm okay with. I'm just saying that's.
I'm still not okay with it.
So the-
I think
the
a
site
football
plan-
field is a long ways to walk with your groceries.
Could be.
You
The
can drop
site
them off.
plan for that one will be, they're talking about applying for their site plan approval soon, and we'll really get into the nitty gritty of their parking for that specific project. But as far as a unit by unit basis on the land use table in their concept plans that were provided in the rezone, they had sufficient parking based off of the two per unit.
Mayor, you were saying?
I'd like to know if the council's ready to act.
Yes. If I can, I need my glasses. Darn it. Okay. Mayor, I make the motion to accept proposed ordinance 2020-32, amend section 10-4-030 of the Syracuse City Municipal Zoning Code pertaining to tandem parking for
Nice.
multifamily residential.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Seth is who I heard. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Hey,
Okay, so that passed 3-2. Jordan and Dave were in opposition to that. Cassie. Let's go on. Item number 9. Continue discussion of potential text amendment for 10-30-20 of the Syracuse Code pertaining to building materials. We'll refresh our memory, will you?
Sure. So this conversation's been going on for a little while, but mostly the arguments have been around whether or not apartment buildings should be allowed to not have any brick, rock, or stone. So we know that the current styles, market demand, hardy board is really popular right now. And we've talked all about the merits of hardy board versus brick and rock. And I think we've concluded that hardy is a good material. The biggest difference between hardy and brick, rock, stone is maybe the painting factor. But it's also something that the image that the city's going for, health, safety, welfare. There's the actual ability to keep the weather out on the home, but there's also, the property values and the longevity and the ability, the city's ability to legislate things that are related to what some would consider maybe aesthetic, frivolous kind of things, but the courts have supported a lot of things that the city requires if the city formulates a vision and a style and a certain aesthetic that they're after. And historically, we required even a lot more brick, rock, and stone on our homes. And you see that once you get to the 84075 zip code, that the home values are actually higher. And I'm sure that's a complicated equation to figure out why the home values are higher in our zip code. But one of the things that do separate us from other communities is that standard, because they are brick is a long lasting material that holds its value well. And so we already have 3 options on our single family homes. Option 1 is 70% brick, rock, stone if you use stucco. And then when Hardy became more popular, we created option 2, which takes it down to 30% brick, rock, stone if you're doing Hardy for the rest of it. And then option 3, which is a new one, allows 100% Hardy as long as it's kind of like the modern farmhouse. You got to have a front porch and you got to have some variation in texture, which on some homes it's sometimes along the wainscot they have a vertical batten that's 6 inches, and then above it it's a vertical batten that's a foot. So technically that's a variation of texture. Or sometimes they put shakes in the eaves or something like that. So, but specifically on the 3rd option, it says that it will not be applied to multifamily. So as you know, we have a new multifamily project that's coming in, and they would like to put a farm kind of structure on there. So Planning Commission weighed in. They weren't in support of it. Architecture Review Committee weighed in on the whole project, and they weren't in support of it. But because you guys are the legislative body, you'll get the final say of what you think is appropriate for the community and whether or not it'd be appropriate for multifamily housing to not have brick, rock, or stone.
Seth, do you want to lead us out on this one?
Sure. So I'm pretty torn on this one, I'll be honest. I guess I have a few questions. One is, Noah, the building that's right across from Walmart, the rebuilding of the apartments that were built after the widening of 2000 West, are those, besides the brick, rock, stone, lower layer, are those considered modern farmhouse style?
No.
Those should have brick, rock, and stone on it.
Yeah.
No, they do. I'm just saying, with the exception of that piece, would they be considered? I mean, because they're just big rectangular blocks, right? That they have.
That plan was approved way before we finished our general plan stuff.
I guess, and so I like the idea that the modern farmhouse is a good looking style. I'm just wondering, so if you,
I don't think, I mean, the short answer, I guess not, but I'm not sure what you're trying to get at. But
well, the idea is that if this, if we remove the requirement for the 30% brick, rock, or stone, and you took that brick off of that, that would be just a giant block of non-farmhouse, but all hardy board building. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, it's becoming really popular, and part of it's the style, and part of it's a little bit of a cost savings. The nice point is the rock and the brick is it does have a little bit. It has a higher contrast in texture.
Sure. I guess my point is, it's not. I mean, changing this and to allow the 100% hardy board is not going to ensure you have a modern farmhouse only style proposed, at least.
No, remember when we were changing it, we're trying to really define what kinds of characteristics are required, and we could have really went down the rabbit hole quite a ways with defining what modern farmhouse, but we distilled it down to one thing: a front porch. And I'd have to go measure. I don't know if those townhomes have big enough front porches, but
I guess that's my point, is just that while I like the idea of the modern farmhouse look, you know, the aesthetics aren't my like biggest strength. I think that you're more in line with that and have a better touch for that, Noah, and having heard from the Architectural Review Committee, which, you know, was not wholly, from my understanding, wasn't like all gung-ho either direction, but also having sat through Planning Commission, and it seemed that the individuals that we've appointed as kind of the, you know, subject matter experts, so to speak. I mean, I don't know if I would go that far, but, you know, the individuals we've entrusted with these decisions kind of came forward with, including some architects on the board, that it was not a favorable decision to make to move it to permissible within multifamily. Including one actually mentioned, you know, one of the architects mentioned that he just didn't know how it would look. And I've kind of scoured my brain for good looking examples and some others. And I think it could go either way. It just really depends on, you know, the effort made here. And so, like I said, I'm really torn on this one. But if the opportunity is specifically surrounded on making it a cheaper option, I wouldn't, you know, necessarily side with that direction.
You were asking about what the biggest difference is, and I think probably the biggest difference between the multifamily and I guess what we consider a true farmhouse is that you don't really see a lot of 3-story townhouse or 3-story farmhouses, but the townhouses and apartments are usually wanting to be 3 stories nowadays.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So that's kind of where I'm at. I know it's not really directional either way, but I would tend to lean towards not allowing it on multifamily housing.
Lisa, do you want to comment?
Well, you've already heard what I have to start on it, so I won't be redundant. I will say that I don't think it has any impact on the cost, because we've heard people say it's actually more expensive to get a fulsome cementitious fiberboard home. But I think the vast majority of people are looking at it to be a farmhouse look. That's what all the single family homes have been that I've been looking at. So I will remain in favor of it, but I don't think that I will be a majority, but I'm okay with that. I'm still in favor of it.
Okay.
And can I ask that clarifying question though? Because that's something that just keeps coming up. I think the point I made last meeting was that I think the sales side ends up being more expensive because it's market driven, and there is a major market for this right now. I think if we were building a house, I would build it all farmhouse style. Oh, my wife would decide we're building it all farmhouse style because she loves it. And I know, looking at a home that we were interested in building, the all farmhouse style was the most expensive option. But I guess on the construction side, that's the question: is it a cheaper option for the development process? And I'm hearing yes, but I guess I'm now.
We built our home on our own, and in fact, so we didn't have it go through a large company. So we were a custom home, and it was as expensive. The hardy plank was as expensive as the brick. So same cost. The installation isn't like siding. It's a full. It's a different process altogether. So it's very similar to, you have to have a specialized person and special companies too. So it's not just go grab a bunch of siding, and have somebody staple it up on your house. So no, it's not cheaper. And I think maybe the people who suggest otherwise may not be the ones working with it, but you're exactly right, Seth. It's market driven. But I can't imagine that anybody's going to say, let me choose an inferior home and pay more for it because it's in style right now. I think people are smart enough to say, I love that style. It's a classic look. The market is bearing the weight of building these homes, and I wouldn't be paying more for a home just because other people liked it if it was inferior.
David, would you weigh in?
Well, I remain against it. I don't think, I think for lack of a better way to explain it, maybe there's too much of a good thing, just doesn't work anymore. I mean, I don't mind the cementatious fiberboard on homes, but I like the variation. I think in particular, when you get a giant 3-story wall, the variation is really important to keep it looking more inviting. And that's my opinion, and other people can have their opinion, but I think it's, I think that it's more appealing to have some variation in texture that is beyond the way that we line up the battens.
Corinne?
On this one, I voted for the change for the homes. I mean, I totally vetted that one. And that was still a tough decision, but I wanted to be able to offer that option to somebody who's building their own home. You know, that you should be able to build what you want. This one, on the other hand, is more for commercial and, you know, multifamily. And so this one, I'm not as, I want it to look good long-term. And I'm just hopeful that whoever would own this structure would upkeep it, but I'm leaning towards not at this time. Yeah. There we go.
Jordan?
So I've spent the last 2 weeks painting ceilings in my home. We originally bought our home and it had the 2-tone as opposed to 3-tone because 2-tone was cheaper. And so I've been painting all the ceilings white so it brightens up the home, and it looks great, but I've learned something. I really hate painting. And the fact that this is a product that requires someone to paint the entire exterior of their house every 10 years or 15 or 20, depending on how long you put it off, I just see this as a maintenance issue that without constant upkeep, it will become an eyesore. And I think there are people out there that are going to have cementatious fiberboard homes that are going to look absolutely stunning. And I admit, I love the brand new homes I see as I drive through that have a lot of this. Lisa's absolutely right. It is a very good look. But it does come with that maintenance issue. And I agree stucco has a similar issue, but we don't allow homes of all stucco either. And so that's kind of where I'm going with this is if this were a durable surface that did not require extensive maintenance on a regular basis, I think I'm all for it. But I've just seen a lot of our existing apartment complexes in the city, maintenance is not their strong suit. And so that's kind of where I am on this. I think part of the reason why cementatious fiberboard is also an expensive thing is because since I found out I hate painting, I decided to try and bid that out. And I don't know if you ever tried to get a bid for painting the inside of your house, but it is a lot. And I can only imagine what the price would be to paint the outside. And so just due to all those maintenance,
it's a lot cheaper to paint the outside than the inside. You don't have nearly the caulking and the sanding and all that crap. But
that's probably true.
But when you get multi-stories, you get lifts and you get all the equipment to move.
So yeah, let's not forget they're gonna have to paint 70% of this still anyway.
Anyway, yeah, they're painting it no matter what.
That's true.
We're not eliminating cementitious fiberboard.
we're not. I'm just saying.
Tape off and plastic over the brick. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Where it's a maintenance issue, and in apartments that there's not a huge profit margin oftentimes, unless you paid it off. I just don't think this is a good idea. So I'm going to side with what it sounds like is the majority and say I'm not ready for this at this point. If it were colored and didn't have to be painted, I would be all for it. But since it's not, I'm not.
Yeah, I'm worried that, well, let's put it this way. We are the council that have kind of changed a little bit of the course of Syracuse's trajectory on multifamily housing, and I want it to be quality. And I'm not sure on doing that for a big apartment yet. So that's why I'm waiting.
it looks like we have a majority. I don't know if we need a motion, but it looks like we have a majority to not take this action. That would be the second time we've arrived at that majority. So do we need a motion, or can we just put this one to bed for at least a while?
We need to make a motion to.
Let's act.
Okay, then I make a motion that we deny any change to the Syracuse code pertaining to building materials.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, Cassie, would you record that with Lisa in opposition? Jordan, this is your issue on town hall meetings.
All right, so I'll just talk to it briefly. I sent the email out to the council just as an idea. I'm one that I don't like public comment, but not for the reason you'd think. I enjoy hearing feedback from the public. I enjoy having them come and express issues and ask questions. The hardest thing I have to do is sit there and stare at them. And knowing that I can't respond because it wasn't on the agenda. So I would love the idea of holding, I don't know if quarterly or semi-annually, that we hold a few town hall meetings where either we get the whole council or a few representative members of the council, and we sit down and we say, come with us with your questions. We are going to answer them as best we can. This will be much better than public comment because we'll be able to discuss anything you want within reason.
So pretty much, sorry.
First question is that legal?
Well,
Yeah, I would love to. Can I just chime in on that really
Yes.
quickly? And
Yes,
and I'm
please.
sure Paul will probably want to have some input as well. But anytime there's a quorum of the council that is meeting, the Open and Public Meetings Act requires that we provide an agenda that has specific agenda items. Like the public has to be able to look at an agenda and see with reasonable specificity the items that are going to be discussed. So I don't know if Paul wants to give input, but I would be concerned about just having an open agenda where because it could lead in so many different directions. And what if you do start having policy discussions with a group, but the entire city wasn't noticed that policy discussion was going to take place, and there may have been other input if others were aware that discussion was going to happen. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Paul, before you chime in, Noah, can we get you to quit sharing your screen so we can look at each other's faces? Thank you.
Sorry.
So yeah, I share Cassie's concerns. I mean, under the Open and Public Meetings Act law, you are allowed to discuss things that are brought up by a citizen. You wouldn't be able to take final action on it. And I would say, like any extensive policy discussions, you would want to schedule those for a future agenda. So if there's a thing you want to talk about with more time and you want to take more public input and have the public be more involved in the interactive process, definitely that would need to be on an agenda. But if you have a period of time where people are invited to come and make comment and to converse with the council, and as long as you keep the conversation brief, you can answer their questions, you can say, that's a good idea, we should talk about that at a future council meeting. I think it'd be okay to have people come and engage with them a little bit more.
But Paul, how do you, or if you're starting to engage in a deeper conversation and, policy decisions start to be made, not decisions, but how you came to or arrived at your policy choice or indicating how you're going to vote or did vote or anything like that, is that prohibited? Is that where you draw the line?
Yeah, it's going to be hard to draw the line. I mean, really, it's when the conversation gets to a point where we really just need to let the whole city know that we're talking about this, and because it may lead to change or it may lead to a policy decision. That's where I'd say let's set this for an agenda, and it might be that the way you do that is through a time limit or something like that. If you can talk about something for a certain amount of time, and it's and there's some council members that are thinking about changing policy or adjusting it, then I'd say that at that point, let's set it for a future agenda. But you are allowed under the law to discuss an item as long as you don't take final action on it if a citizen brings it up in a public meeting. That's one of the exceptions they have to the agenda rule.
Brody?
Yeah. Paul, what about the opportunity if we called for residents to say submit the topic, and then we schedule agenda items based on the things that are, the issues that are submitted. Now, some people won't show up even though they submitted a question. So I know there's some logistical issues there, but what about something like that to where the topics to be discussed by the council are advertised? Maybe that would help. I don't know.
That would be totally fine.
If they said, if we got a submission that said we'd like to have this item discussed and nobody showed up, we could just say, in light of the fact that the submission person has not shown up, we're gonna not address this tonight or whatever. I don't know. I mean, because I agree with you. You don't want to have people submit and say, I want to have this talked about, and then not show up.
Sometimes you know what the issue is, especially if it's an issue that is generating a lot of chatter throughout the community. Then you could probably call kind of a town hall type meeting on that issue, and you already know that there's a lot of interest out there.
Well, I'm thinking like the regional park bond, for instance. How would we go about accomplishing an informational session where we get to sit there and kind of state, the pros and cons as we see them fit on an individual level, and then just kind of receive feedback in general, be able to address some of those questions.
What UDOT does, they're coming through and there are big issues to be decided, and they can even get input from citizens who will be impacted by it.
Yeah, and those meetings they have a specific issue agenda, on the agenda.
So could we just what we'll be talking about? It would be specific, one thing or two things that we'll say this is what we're talking about. I think that's a great.
Yeah, I'd say let's do a town hall that says, let's talk about parks and why not the West Davis corridor interchanges.
I think that's a much better policy, is picking a very specific topic rather than willy-nilly, because I think you just end up with a lot of yelling and pitchforks coming at you.
You get a lot more chance of having people show up if they know what the issue is.
Right, and it'll be more productive, really.
And then at the end, have a Q&A that would, and the Q&A would be, say, right now we're taking, so not even a Q&A, just let's look at topics for the next building, for the next meeting. What are you interested in? This meeting will be held in 3 months. What are your interests? And we can look at doing a town hall for those types of issues as the questions you guys have.
Yeah,
I really like that.
Yeah, being very specific definitely will help. And I don't think you want to take it off of just what the chatter is on Facebook. I think you want to be very pointed on what you want information getting out to the public.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we know that every few months there's a big topic. And one of the most frustrating things that we've heard from citizens, and that I feel too, is the inability to converse back and forth. Yep. So when we have public comment section, they will say something, because we aren't allowed to respond. They might leave the meeting without conclusion or any resolution, but also they might think that we didn't care what they said, when really just limited in how we can respond.
We can even do a survey and say, what do you want us to talk about in one of these things?
Yeah. What do you think we ought to do? Should we take 2 of you and meet with staff and come back with some proposals on what we do?
I think that anytime you're going to say that we're going to talk with the public, you have to allow the entire council to be a part of that. You can't select and say we're going to only have a couple of people get to talk to the public.
I think the mayor's just saying for planning one of these.
Just coming back with some proposals.
Yeah.
How the whole council could be. We can't get 3 of you together.
Right.
Can't get 5 of you together without noticing the meeting. What I'm saying is bringing two of you together with Paul or
To plan a city, to plan a meeting.
to plan how to approach this, and then bring it back to us in a work session and
Yeah.
propose
I
several
think that
options.
we just do it in this meeting. I don't know that why we would need a subgroup to decide the subjects. I mean, we talk about what's going on all the time. Why can't we just have it be an agenda item and we decide?
Are you talking about, Mayor, to decide the subjects, or you're talking about kind of to propose some strategies for how to hold these things?
That's it. Just some options, to bring us back some options. We didn't have all of us go down to the Boysons and talk to them. We
Yeah.
didn't, we didn't have all of you meeting with the CARES Act money. But we brought back and accounted to you, and then it was the action of the council that moved it forward.
Yeah, I think what we got to do for today is let's each member of the council submit a few items that we would like to discuss in a town hall meeting. And then at the work session, let's just pick two and schedule a town hall meeting, maybe even three, depending on how long we think it'll take.
Yeah.
Is there any interest in requesting input either through the city's social media or any other means for agenda items?
Yeah, I think that should be, let's incorporate that into our discussion at the next work session.
And
to
what if
pick the
something like,
topics.
what if we have it come from the Syracuse City website where we, send stuff out on Facebook and we say, here's a quick little monkey survey, whatever those are called. And, these are
Survey monkey.
Yes.
Survey monkey.
Well, and really, once we have one meeting, we could just have the survey there for the public that showed up too.
Yeah.
I will say this, I'm concerned that over the last 5 years, every time we've had a city hall, it ends up being a PowerPoint presentation with one side of the issue that we're putting forward. And that's okay, I guess, if we all are 100% in agreement. But if we don't all agree, you have to allow a difference of opinion to be presented.
Absolutely.
Yeah, say that the same thing happens on social media. So this to me is a much more equitable ability, because on social media, only two people can chime in on the council. And then after that, it's in opposition to that. And so I think that if you're going to have a city hall, or I'm sorry, a town hall meeting, then you have 5 opinions, and they may not all agree, or they may all agree, but you're disseminating information and you're getting feedback from citizens, and real information is going to be given, because we'll have our staff who are incredibly bipartisan. I mean, there are a lot of times when I do not know where anybody stands on anything, because they're so careful about how they phrase things. So if our staff is involved in it as well, and they can give some insights that public opinion may not be aware of, and we may not even know what all of the ins and outs of things or nuances are going to be. So I think that when you get a town hall, you have a much better and more civil dialogue than what happens on social media.
You have to say it to your face. It makes a difference.
That's a nice sign, by the way, Brody.
Yeah.
Like that. That's,
We've enjoyed that.
Down in front of the police station.
Yeah.
Let's advertise that some more.
Hasn't it been there for, golly, I think we voted for
Yeah,
it
it's been there for a long time.
5.5 years ago. Something like that.
I'm still there.
Cassie,
Put it in the magazine.
Yeah.
can we put this on the agenda for the work session? Then can I make an assignment? I guess what I was saying is I don't want to be misunderstood, but you, Jordan, you brought this to our attention because you saw a notice at Kaysville. What I'm concerned about is, have we researched best practices of other cities of how they hold town meetings? And I don't want a.
You're saying Kaysville doesn't have the best reputation for town hall meetings?
No, maybe they do. Maybe they've got the corner.
We need to look into it.
Let's talk about Big Red.
I'll add that to the agenda, Mayor.
Okay. What
I'll just
I'm
wrap that
saying,
discussion up for you.
what I'm saying is, I don't want this to become Facebook in person.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that we control the meeting, and I don't want to get into the weeds with Paul. So
Yeah, I think if we do this, it's still, Mayor, you would be running the meeting. We would still follow Robert's Rules of Order as far as one person speaking. We won't be obviously making any motions or anything like that. It would just be, you will recognize speakers, and everyone will get some time to present their opinion.
okay, that's
I don't want it to be an open forum where everyone can just shout questions and we'll try and respond all at the same time.
That's why I'm saying is there might be somebody who runs a town hall meeting differently than Robert's rules, and if it works and it's a best practice, I'd like to know that best practice.
If it would be helpful, I can reach out to the Utah Recorders Association and get feedback from them.
Okay, that'd be great, Cassie.
Yes, please.
Thank
Thanks.
you. All right, let's move on. We'll put that on the agenda for the work session. We're at item number 11, which we will reopen public comment. Speaking of listening to the public, is there anyone left here who would like to address the council? Hearing and seeing none, I'll move us on to mayor council announcements. And I'm just going to go across in order that you appear on my screen. Jordan, you're in the upper left-hand corner of my screen.
Great. I don't have a lot. My committees have been somewhat inactive over the past little while, over the holidays and everything. So the only thing I can do is give kudos to Cresta. Apparently with all of the completion of Founders Park, Syracuse Elementary is pretty happy with how everything turned out as far as what they utilize, and they've removed the parking barricade, the barricade they had in place, and they've redone their traffic flow. And my wife said it's good. So if she's good, I'm good.
Great. Great. Dave, you're next on my screen.
At this time, I actually don't have much. Things are starting up with all the various committees, but it's a new year and there's really not anything new.
Okay. Thank you, David. Corinne?
A couple things. Well, first of all, I want to tell you about the museum meeting today. They have started to utilize the 4 youth that we sent to them from the Youth Commission, and they are thrilled with their helps that they're getting from them. Right now, they have them helping them write up PowerPoints. So Elizabeth is giving them like scripts, and they're helping to put together the PowerPoints, and they're going out and taking photographs of different areas of the city that are historical. And then she's putting together PowerPoints specifically for junior high and high school kids as they are in history classes, and they're talking about American history, and actually get a little snippet from her about Syracuse history. So she's been in contact with these teachers, and she's putting these PowerPoints together to actually be taught in these classes. And they're just thrilled with the help. And I'm so grateful. Thank you, Lisa, for helping that happen. And hopefully we can get some more of our youth started with other areas of our city too. Then also in May, first of all, in April, they're going to be starting hopefully a new thing called Music at the Museum. And the idea is we have all of these instruments there, and they want to have older people and youth and come and actually play some of these instruments and put those online for people to participate in, either watching it live or after it's recorded. So it's a really cool thing, kind of like like Elizabeth said, a more sophisticated jam session that you can participate in and watch, and both for current people living in our community, but also to recognize these great pieces that we have just gathering dust in the museum. And then in May, they're putting together a Syracuse Heritage Recipe Book. Please let your friends and neighbors know if they have a great recipe to submit it to the museum. And if you have a story to go with it, especially if it's your grandma's recipe for bread or something like that, to write the story of what your grandma, who your grandma was and when she'd make it, and if you got to help her and all those kinds of things. A story with a recipe is really more meaningful than just the recipe. And then they want to combine those together, and they're actually looking at a website that will print them for like $2 or $3, and then they'll sell them for a little bit extra and for a fundraiser in their little store that they're getting started. Then also, they are looking for donations to come to the city. So if you know of anybody who would be willing, specifically businesses, they are looking for any sort of donations. Lastly, they are trying to promote the fact that really Syracuse Museum is a regional museum. And I didn't even realize that until the meeting today. But for instance, Clinton and West Point don't have a museum at all. And so nothing's being collected for those communities. And we have several people on our museum board who are from West Point and Clinton. In fact, our museum head or chair, he lives in Clinton. And so please let businesses know from those communities as well, and people know to submit recipes from those communities, that this is a regional collection and a regional participation in the museum. So anyway, they're just doing such great work, and I'm so impressed with them all the time. They're also looking to possibly get some internships going for the museum, and they're having a hard time getting some of them going because a lot of internships are now paid. So they're looking into possibility of part of the donations going towards helping to pay for an internship, which would be a twofold win-win for the intern and win-win for them to be able to utilize useful thinking about computers, because they don't meet in Zoom. They're just not the generation to do that. So they need a little bit of help on that. And lastly, Past Perfect, yay! Next week, they are going to be updating all of their inventory, all of their photographs, all of their documents. Everything is going to be uploaded, and it's so important because if there was ever a fire or water damage or anything like that, to have all of those preserved is so important. And that's going to be done next week, or at least started next week. And they are thrilled. Finally, yay! They've been working on this for about a year to try to get all their inventory done so they could put it all on this new forum. So thank you.
Thanks.
And I'll leave it at that. I'll let Lisa tell you about CTC. So.
Lisa?
That was a mouthful.
We had a CTC meeting, actually had one for the youth committee and youth involvement committee last week, Thursday. And we've made some plans for a couple of things. We wanted to do something actually physical and something that was going to be virtual and maybe not quite as interactive. But one of the things that we're really pressing or trying to inform people about is a podcast that Davis County Behavioral Health does that's called Just This Breath. And it is, in fact, let me just make sure that's what it's called so that I don't give you the wrong information. Yes, Just This Breath. And it's mindfulness practices for children, and it's free. So it's actually for adults as well, but it's kind of a calming, meditative podcast that they can listen to. It can help them go to sleep. It can help with anxieties. And a lot of those relax or calm apps you have to pay for. And this one, they wanted us to let all of the communities know that we have access to that, and to let our parents know and our kids and the children know that they have this option. And then we also, we'll talk about the other later when we get closer to it. And then today we had a CTC board meeting with Garrett was there, and a lot of people were there that are just on the board in general and involved in the community with CTC. And we made some plans, and we heard about a couple of programs. One of them was it Strengthen the Family? Hold on, I wrote it here somewhere.
Strengthening Families and Incredible Years.
Thank you. Incredible Years and Strengthening Families, two different programs that are 12-week courses that are free to families, and they are exceptional. One of them is for like new parents, and one is for just family relations. So those are things that we wanted to try and see if our city could put out information about it. And along those lines, I had a chamber meeting and we talked about really the struggle of all of our small businesses. And we wanted to see if there's a possibility of the city putting on our website or giving a link or something to Syracuse businesses that just says, these are the ones that are open. These are the ones that, you know, and maybe just give them, we're talking about doing a spotlight on them in the magazines every week or sorry, every month. And maybe we can say this month's spotlight business is this. And I don't think that there's any conflict of interest there. And maybe I'm not seeing that right, Mayor, and maybe you feel otherwise, or you or Brody or well, any of you, just let me. But
Herald Journal used to do that when I lived in Cache Valley. They'd pick a business and do a highlight on it. So that's a great.
We're so worried about so many of them that are just at their wits' end at this point and with no idea of how long it's going to continue. And even though we're open, there is still an extreme, well, just like our judge was saying earlier, just people aren't out, and that makes a difference for all of our businesses. So let's see. So those are the main things we wanted to talk about. That's it.
Thank you, Lisa. Seth?
Just a few things. One was I just wanted to, so our family has had a little bit of a visit with coronavirus over the last little bit, and I've been squishing on my virus stress ball during the meeting. But I wanted to, one, give a shout out to Davis Health Department for the great work that they do in helping bring support to our community, but also just to highlight some of the things that they mentioned to us on our call. We had multiple calls because every time somebody gets the virus, they call you again. And so I get calls from the Salt Lake County Health Department, which does a great job because I work there. And then also from the Davis County Health Department. And the Davis County Health Department was extremely helpful in providing information that if individuals are struggling to find access to groceries or just life's necessities or having issues with rent, or we've talked about, you know, this council has also provided support for healthcare needs or childcare needs and stuff like that. Really to take advantage of it. Nobody needs to struggle in isolation. There's support there. And so I just want to give a shout out for them, and also just to remind people that those resources are available. And then also not pressuring anybody, but just to remember that as the vaccine rolls out, we're now into our, healthcare workers and K-12 educators, but also starting next Monday, anybody 70 or older can start January 18th applying for the vaccine. You can find information on coronavirus.utah.gov. And so just information awareness, I want to make sure people are familiar with that. And then like everybody else, most of my committees are just kind of not meeting right now. Planning Commission didn't have anything going on over the last month because of a lack of agenda items. Excuse me. But also we talked about a little while ago from Cook Elementary, their concerns about traffic. And Brody, I was hoping if I could follow up with you about that, just to see if there's any kind of future thoughts about some of their traffic concerns. Maybe I'll just send you an email on that.
Okay, that's on Cook Elementary?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Thanks. It was especially specifically in regards to, that they had that accident where a child was hit because of the traffic patterns there, and they had some special requests.
Yeah. I know they changed that traffic pattern, I want to say about 5 or 6 years ago, because the traffic was backing up out into the street through the neighborhood. And that new pattern actually helped traffic flow better. But yeah, maybe there's other things.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. I have just 2 items. I am meeting tomorrow with Jess Bigler from North Davis Behavioral Health. And Corinne, you're going to join us if you can squeeze it in at work. We're going to talk about Everyday Strong, which is a United Way sponsored event in Utah County, which also helps family, helps provide social services to family. And from what Jess has told me, that we are eligible for some grant money that they want to, for Syracuse City specifically, to participate in because we're organized with CTC. The other thing is that you mentioned highlighting businesses. The February issue of the Connection magazine will highlight Leela's Luau and the conversation that went on there between residents and Ben Fona and a KUTV reporter's interview of Ben. But my message will be focused on that and the uniqueness of our community in rising to help one another. So we can talk highlighting other businesses. We'll get you involved in that and talk that. Brody, do you have something that you'd like to visit with us about?
I've got a few things actually. So we'll start with this drawing or this picture here. The water tank is live. It is operational. So what you see here is the new 3 million gallon water tank. The one on my other shoulder is the 1 million gallon water tank. The next step will be to basically convert that over to secondary water. And then the one behind me here is the one that will get demolished.
So the question is, did anyone notice a bump in their water pressure over the past week or two?
In their culinary water?
Because I'm not gonna lie, I saw some complaints that water pressure went down. I'm assuming that's while we were filling the tank. But I actually noticed about a week ago that there was a difference in the water pressure. So interesting.
Yeah,
I don't know if that was perceived in my mind, but
I've always had great pressure.
A lot of homes have a regulator in them, so they may not experience any because their regulator is actually keeping it the same. So I think each home is going to be kind of depends on what's going on in your house, but yeah, some people may have, depending on how their house system is set up. Another thing, so the land sale to SAA is pretty close to be signed, and we'll schedule the closing date for that. So that is moving forward. The UDOT closing is going to be a little bit later because there were some minor changes in the property. Again, that UDOT has doesn't affect price or anything. It's just basically engineering stuff. So youth court, Lisa. So the youth court is welcoming. Well, we're discussing welcoming West Point to join the Syracuse youth court, and at the next work session, that'll be on the agenda for your consideration to enter into an agreement with West Point so that their kids can both sit on the youth court and their youth offenders can go through the youth court. So that'll be a good partnership with them. The next item is, last year we gave an extension to John Diamond on the lease of the cemetery extension property. So that is getting close to be advertised for requests for bids. In the meantime, that extension expired in December, so we need to re-extend it. Since it's already contemplated in the contract, it doesn't need to be voted on again by the council. Basically what it is it's a 1-year extension, but we can terminate it at any time. And he actually really doesn't, I think, he doesn't pay anything. He just maintains the property. And then once we sell it, he has to work something out with the new owner if he wants to continue to farm it. So unless there's a problem with that, we'll go ahead and sign that extension. Unless you have any objections to it. And then the final thing is the legislative session is upon us. They're going to start next week, and our legislative policy appointees aren't going to be set until February. So I don't know if Mayor, if you wanted to see if there's going to be any change to that, but basically Paul and I have have a suggestion on how to track legislation this year. And Cassie, would you let my other account to share the screen? If you could allow
Yep, just
it.
1 sec. Yep.
Thanks.
You should be good.
Okay. So there are 6 people on our legislative team. Right now it's me, Paul, the mayor, Dave, Corinne, and Lisa. And what we were thinking this year is Paul and I looked at all the state legislative committees. And this is in addition to what the league is doing. So, sometimes, the league is focusing on some things, and sometimes we want to focus on something that specifically impacts Syracuse City. So in order to watch legislation, all the bills have to go through a committee in order to get voted on. We divided these committees into 8 groups, and there are 6 of us on our legislative team. So we figured maybe what we could do is divide up these 8 groups amongst the 6 people, and each person can monitor the agenda of these legislative committees. And the state website is really good. They stream all their committee meetings. They post the agenda. You can even subscribe, I think through text or email whenever a new agenda is posted. So it's a really good website. Anyway, we figured that's how we could follow the legislation is, through the committee agenda this year, and that might help because there's so many bills, and it's kind of hard for just 1 or 2 or even 3 people to keep track of them. And so I thought maybe that might be a good way to go.
Brody, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Because there are 3 members of the council already on this committee, would this be exempt from the Open and Public Meetings Act, Paul?
Yeah, because the idea here is that we would chat through Teams on, we're not making necessarily decisions for the city because we would come to the council as needed, but I mean, legislation happens fast, and sometimes you can't wait for a council meeting.
That's why I'm saying if we've already got 3 of the members we got 8 topics. What about adding 2 more council persons and giving them assignment? If we're not making any decisions and spreading the load a little bit too, giving that experience to 2 others.
I'm not sure if Paul's going to weigh in. It would still, I feel like that would still kind of create an issue with a quorum of the council communicating outside of a council meeting, but maybe Paul's already discussed that with Brody.
We didn't specifically discuss that. I mean, I think you can give updates and things. If it becomes a policy discussion where there's a lot of back and forth, then that's the type of thing where you would want to have a noticed meeting. But if you have a council member that says, hey, I was watching, this committee is going to have a hearing on this tomorrow. Here's my take on it. Encourage you to contact our legislator, because really that's what we're talking about here. I don't know that we're going to be doing other things other than just kind of organizing and saying, why don't you contact our local state senator or whoever. So I don't think we're going to be having policy discussions. It's more just keeping each other in the loop and tracking specific bills that we're interested in.
Since there already are 3 members of the council involved in this team,
It's not going to get any worse.
is it going to be any worse by adding 2?
Well, I think the reason that there are 3 council members, isn't it because we're allowed under the ULCT guideline 3 voting members and 2 non-voting members. So I think that the intent is that we can all participate. We just only get 3 votes in one of those meetings.
Yeah, and this is outside the ULTC, though. This is something
Right.
we're forming for our own benefit. And I can't see any reason why all 5 of you couldn't
Can't
be
be
involved in
this part.
monitoring one of
Yeah.
these legislative committees.
I
And
agree
yet-
with you. I was just kind of trying to make a reference to why we ended up with 3.
Yeah, I think we just have to be diligent. If, let's say there's a bill that comes up and maybe there's some division on the council as to what position the city should take, and it needs to be discussed, we probably should put it on an agenda for
Put it
discussion.
on agenda, yeah.
I don't think it's a concern about the number of people that are participating in the LPC discussions and voting. It's just we have not had this type of setup in the past where we have a channel that a quorum of the council is communicating through outside of a public meeting. So as long as Paul's good with it and we are able to document those conversations, if there is some kind of a grammar request for it in the future, and if controversial issues are going to be discussed and acted on in an open meeting, then I think that's fine. Just have to put my concern out there.
In the past with ULCT, we've always tried to stick with 2 of us at a time. Like if we were there, or if there were 3, we don't sit together, that kind of thing. So, and I don't think we've ever had a conversation about it with 3 of us. So.
Even from what our experience has been, it hasn't been decision making so much as it's been just information when we discussed it, or when Brody would send out an update. Even though we attended the meetings, I'd see what Brody had written and think, well, I missed a lot of that. So I think it was just really helpful to be informed about things. So I would think it would be a great idea to have each one of us in charge of one topic and just inform everybody on what's going on. And then if we need to make a decision, then we can do it. We can break it up.
See, I thought the reason why we... Go ahead, Brody.
I was just going to say, it's probably a good idea just on every council agenda through the session, we just do sort of a legislative roundup.
That's a good idea. That's good.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be happy to participate.
Okay.
I think the only issue we had is a lot of times, especially with the ULCT that discusses a lot of these, it was at like 1 p.m. on a Monday, if I recall.
Noon, not every Monday is when the meetings
Noon.
are. And yeah, that's tough with work.
Yeah, and that was the problem, is we had 3 because we were concerned there would be oftentimes one of us couldn't make it.
Yeah.
So if each person has one topic, and like I know for me at my work, they're pretty restrictive on streaming. They don't want all of us engineers sitting there watching YouTube all day, I guess. So I know that we have some pretty strict policies of streaming. You can go out to lunch and watch it on your phone, I suppose. But I think that was kind of the ideology that we had. We had sub-ins. If for some reason you couldn't make it, someone else could fill in. So we just want to make sure we don't lose that ability.
Yeah.
And also, I guess we just need to make sure that everyone can cover their assigned topic adequately, including ULCT.
Paul, I was wondering if maybe you could play sheriff on a Teams channel. If we're going to channel this, you're going to create a team, Brody, on Teams.
Yeah.
If we created a team, if he could act as referee along there, if he sees us getting involved in that, then throw a yellow flag or something.
Yeah, I can do that.
Can you? So does anybody have a specific committee they want to follow?
You put the list back up. I didn't even get to read the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that something we want to do tonight? We can do that.
Starts Monday.
Okay. Well, I just didn't know if we want to do it over email or whatnot, but here we go. Okay, so we have group 1, which is business and labor committees. Group 2, economic development and workforce. Group 3 is political subdivisions, which is typically all of the state code that regulates cities and how they govern. Group 4 is the judiciary and law enforcement bills, which I'm told is going to have quite a bit of action this year. Group 5 is, we call it state lands. It's natural resources, agriculture, and environment. But that's where a lot of the bills that impact Antelope Island State Park would come through. And we've got group 6 is retirement. Group 7 is taxation. And group 8 is infrastructure and technology.
May I make one assignment? Maybe two. The judiciary and law to Paul, and the political subdivisions to Brody.
Yay!
That sounds good to me.
8 sounds like the most fun to me.
And I think Lisa would be good with business and labor.
That's what I was gonna say. I'll do group 1. Business and labor.
And Jordan, you said 8?
Yeah.
Dave, you've always been concerned about taxation and truth in taxation.
Yeah.
You good with that one?
Yeah.
Who we got left? Seth?
Seth and me.
Well, I'm the closest to retirement, so.
Oh, I'm pretty sure I'm older than you, but okay.
I think he was being facetious.
I would almost prefer not to be in retirement, but I'll do whatever you guys. I'm not really. I already attend a few of these committees anyway.
Oh,
so,
what do you attend? Because then you don't want to.
Yeah, which division?
Something that Paul's already going to.
Oh.
So, yeah, so I'm fine with that, and he's the lawyer.
Okay.
And Dave, I wouldn't mind you as my backup on the technology, because some of that you have a stronger background in than I do.
I could go to group 2, economic development workforce, or
Okay.
I don't really, whatever.
Okay, you
And
take that.
Does that leave retirement?
Retirement for you. You're out of
Or
here.
state lands. I would back up state lands just because I know they're going to deal with some of the sewer board issues. But
Well, I'd like to take state lands, because I'd like to work with state lands and with the county and with our economic development plan.
okay.
So, and then what one was Corinne?
I'll do retirement.
Retirement. Okay. Does that have them covered, Brody?
Yep, that's 8.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I'll have to maybe figure out how to watch these committees. If you have any suggestions. let me
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll send out some information, and then also what I was thinking is maybe in the work session in January later this month, maybe I'll do a quick training on using Teams, like a really quick training, so that I can show how we're going to communicate.
That'd be great.
Thank you. That'd be awesome.
Because yeah, I don't know how to watch a lot of these committee meetings. So
Okay. All
Remember,
right.
we're doing this for Zoom, and we thought it would be just for a meeting or two, and Cassie run us through all of it.
Yeah.
Remember, that was an eternity ago.
Well, I'm involved with Teams, and I'm still learning. Cassie gives me instruction every week. So, all right, Council, we do have a need to meet in a closed session. Cassie has sent us a new link for that meeting. She sent it through email.
Motion to move into closed session.
I have a motion to move into closed session. Do we have a second? Second by Jordan. Any other discussion? All in favor?
I
Hi.
Any opposed? Okay, let's move to closed session.